This is the second in a four-part video series about the new Oakland zoning ordinance. In this segment, we'll be talking about the regulations for residential areas. To learn more about what zoning is and why it's important to every Oakland resident and business, you can watch the first video. The third video will tell you about the regulations for commercial areas, and the fourth video will explain the zoning maps. Oakland has more than 100 neighborhoods, from rural areas in the hills to dynamic urban centers around Lake Merritt and downtown. Zoning regulations are used to guide the density of future development in these neighborhoods, as well as the size and location of buildings. The city's residential areas have been divided into 15 proposed districts. Each residential zone consists of 2 letters and a number from 1 to 5. The first letter, R, indicates residential. The second letter relates to the general plan map category. The RH zones correspond to the hillside residential category. The RD zones correspond to the detached residential category. The RM zones correspond to the mixed housing type residential category, and the RU zones refer to the urban residential category. The numbers distinguish the density allowed in each zone. In general, the districts get more dense as you move through this list. The first category is hillside residential, or the RH zone. There are 4 hillside residential zones, ranging from the RH1 zone, which has a minimum lot size of 1 acre, or 43,560 square feet, to the RH4 zone, which has a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet on steeply sloping lots and 6,500 square feet on relatively flat lots. The hillside residential zone is primarily mapped in the Oakland Hills, extending from Berkeley on the north to San Leandro on the south. It includes the North Hills area and Montclair, the Joaquin Miller, Hillcrest Estates and Ridgemont areas, and the Chabot Park, Keller Road, and Sequoia areas in the South Oakland Hills. Here you see some examples of what different hillside densities look like. At the top left, you see the Hillcrest Estates neighborhood, where the lots are 1 acre or more. At the bottom left, you see the area near the Oakland Zoo, where lots are 12,000 square feet or more. And at the bottom right, you see an area of the North Hills where the 8,000 square foot minimum would apply. In all of these zones, and in all residential areas of Oakland, homeowners are entitled to apply for a permit to add an in-law apartment or secondary unit to their primary residence. Under state law, the city cannot prohibit in-law units as long as they meet standards for parking, square footage, and other criteria. The next zoning categories are RD1 and RD2, corresponding to areas shown on the general plan as detached residential. The primary areas designated RD1 and RD2 are Upper Rockridge, Upper Diamond, Oakmore, Lincoln Heights, and Redwood Heights, Maxwell Park and Millsmont, Sheffield Village, Elmhurst, Brookfield Village, and Sobrante Park, Central East Oakland neighborhoods such as Havenscourt and Fairfax, and the Lower Hills neighborhoods such as Trestle Glen, Glenview, and Haddon Hill. The RD1 and RD2 zones both have a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet and allow 1 housing unit per parcel. However, for lots in the RD2 zone that are 6,000 square feet or larger, residents may apply for a conditional use permit, or a CUP, to create a 2-unit building such as a duplex or a 2-family home. The CUP means that neighbors will be notified and certain findings must be made before the project is approved. Applying for a permit is not a guarantee of receiving permission to build. The next zoning category is mixed housing type residential. As the name suggests, these areas include a mix of single-family homes, duplexes, townhomes, flats, triplexes, fourplexes, and small apartment buildings. There are 4 residential districts in this category: RM1, RM2, RM3, and RM4. The mixed housing type districts are primarily mapped in North Oakland, including Rockridge and Temescal, West Oakland, the Piedmont Avenue, Rose Garden, and Upper Adams Point area, the Laurel and Diamond districts, the San Antonio and Fruitvale neighborhoods, and parts of East Oakland. In the next few slides, we'll explain the differences between the RM zones. The RM1 zone allows one housing unit per lot and is primarily a single-family zone. However, on lots larger than 4,000 square feet, 2 units may be built with a conditional use permit. Here you see an example of a 2-unit structure in Rockridge on a lot that's just over 4,000 square feet. This is typical of what you find in this zone. Buildings with more than 2 units are not permitted in the RM1 zone. The RM2 zone is slightly more dense than the RM1 zone and has more small lots, but still consists mostly of single-family homes. For lots smaller than 4,000 square feet, only one house per lot is permitted. On larger lots, you can build a duplex like the one pictured here on the right. If your lot is 7,500 square feet or more, you can apply for a CUP to do more than 2 units. The number of units you can build depends on your lot size. The formula is 1 unit for every 2,500 square feet of lot area. Here you see examples of the next category, RM3. Like RM1 and RM2, this zone only allows 1 unit on lots less than 4,000 square feet. Once you reach a lot size of 4,500 square feet, you can build 1 unit for every 1,500 square feet of lot area, but a CUP is required. The 2 projects you see here would fit under the proposed RM3 rules. RM4 is slightly more dense than RM3. It allows 1 housing unit for every 1,100 square feet of lot area. Buildings with more than 5 units, like those shown here, would be compatible with this zone, although they would require a conditional use permit. The final residential category is urban residential. There are 5 zoning districts in this category, labeled RU1 through RU5. The first 3 of these districts occur in neighborhoods, while the last 2, RU4 and 5, primarily occur along major thoroughfares. The urban residential zone is mapped in areas of the city with concentrations of apartment buildings and condominiums, or in areas where more multifamily housing is desired in the future. These include the Upper Telegraph Avenue corridor from Highway 24 to Alcatraz, parts of the Piedmont Avenue neighborhood, parts of the Grand Lake neighborhood, the MacArthur corridor in the Laurel and Diamond districts and also in East Oakland, the Foothill and Bancroft corridors, parts of the International Boulevard corridor between downtown and San Leandro, the area east of Lake Merritt, parts of Adams Point, and the Acorn area of West Oakland. Again, we'll walk you through examples of each of the densities allowed in the urban residential districts. Here you see 2 examples of RU1 densities. Both of the projects shown here are fourplexes that meet this criteria. Moving on to the RU2 district, the zoning allows 1 housing unit for every 800 square feet of lot area. So, for example, if you have an 8,000 square foot lot, you can build 10 units. Here you see 2 examples of housing in this density range. The next zone is RU3, which allows 1 unit for every 450 square feet of lot area. So, in other words, if you have a 9,000 square foot lot, you can build 20 units. Buildings in RU3 tend to be 3 or 4 stories, and they may have parking on the bottom floor, as the building on the right does here. Next, we have the RU4 zones. These zones occur along major thoroughfares, including portions of MacArthur, International, Foothill, and Telegraph Avenues. Most of the RU4 areas are actually zoned for commercial uses today, but have been developed over time with residential uses. Other sections of these same thoroughfares are zoned RU5. The RU5 areas tend to have many active commercial uses today, but our general plan suggests that over time they will transition to more residential uses. The regulations for these areas do allow new commercial uses, but encourage more housing and mixed-use development in the future. We are not going to go into detail on the changes that have been made to the residential zoning regulations in this presentation, but here you see some of the highlighted changes. For example, the new zoning establishes floor area ratio requirements and lot coverage limits for properties on steeply sloped lots. The floor area ratio requirements limit the size of the building you can put on a lot based on the size of the lot. This is a way of preventing overly massive or bulky structures. The new regulations also provide more flexibility for old commercial storefronts and other existing non-residential buildings that happen to be in residential neighborhoods. Our current regulations make it hard to use these spaces in a productive way and often result in ground floor space being left vacant. The new regulations make it a little easier to use these spaces for activities like offices, small restaurants, and green grocers. Most of these activities would still require a conditional use permit, ensuring that neighbors have a chance to review and comment. Most would be subject to strict limits on size, as well as how and when they operate. That concludes the overview of the residential zones. To learn more, please visit www.oaklandnet.com/zoning update.